Greetings and welcome. Hope everyone's doing fine and you're up for some interesting poltergeist cases that are still unclear to this day. When it comes to poltergeist, you can try to prove or debunk the activity. But to this day, poltergeists are still subject of heated debates between paranormal researchers and some scientists, who have answer for everything. Although, unlike paranormal researchers, they have never spent any time in any of alleged haunted location and done some real research for themselves. Well, we all have right to speak our minds, so let's just leave it to that. Before we begin, consider helping me out by subscribing and buying me a coffee. That would be so cool of you. Okay, let's dive into some of most interesting poltergeist cases. The Drummer of Tedworth is a case of an alleged poltergeist manifestation in the West Country of England by Joseph Glanville from his book. Early accounts reported that in 1661 a local landowner, John Moppeson, owned a house in the town of Tedworth, had brought a lawsuit against an unlicensed drummer, William Drury, whom he accused of collecting money by false pretenses. After he had won judgment against the drummer, the drum was turned over to Moppeson by the local bailiff. Moppeson then found his house plagued by nocturnal drumming noises. It was alleged that the drummer had brought these plagues of noises upon Moppeson's head by witchcraft. Drury was said to have been associated with a band of gypsies. Glanville, who visited the house in 1663, had claimed to have heard strange scratching noises under a bed in the children's room. On Christmas Day, 1667, Samuel Pepys in his diary records his wife Elizabeth reading the story to him. He found it to be a strange story of spirits and worth reading indeed. In 1716, the witty writer and politician Joseph Addison wrote a play, The Drummer, inspired by events at Tedworth. However, he updated the story to the recent War of the Spanish Succession and gave a rational explanation of the ghostly drumming. A returning veteran, thought killed in action, does it to scare off two suitors from his now wealthy widow. Charles Mackay, in his extraordinary popular delusion and the madness of crowds, considered this phenomena to be undoubtedly fraudulent, produced by confederates of the drummers, and suggested Moppeson was easily deceived. Amos Norton Kraft also suggested that this phenomenon were a result of trickery. The old rectory in Epworth is a Queen Anne-style building rebuilt after a fire in 1709, which has been completely restored, and it's now the property of the British Methodist Church, who maintained it as a museum. It is the site of supposed paranormal events that occurred in 1716, while the Wesley family was living in the house. The rectory was home to Reverend Samuel Wesley, his wife Susanna, and their 19 children, one of whom, John Wesley, grew up to become founder of the Methodist Church. The Epworth Rectory haunting, also known as the Wesley poltergeist, is one of the best-known English poltergeist claims. From December 1716 until January 1717, it is said to have been plagued by a series of regularly occurring mysteries, loud noises and knockings, apparently caused by the ghost, the eldest Wesley daughter, Hattie, nicknamed Old Jeffrey, who made his presence known to all on Christmas Day 1716. In Mrs. Wesley's words, there was such a noise in the room over our heads, as if several people were walking, then running up and down the stairs, that we thought the children would be frightened. According to the tale, as she and her husband searched the house in vain for a culprit, old Geoffrey continued rattling and thundering in every room, even blowing an invisible horn and deafening decibels. Old Geoffrey supposedly disappeared in January 1717, just as suddenly as he had appeared. Eddington Bruce noted that the earliest records that document the haunting have large discrepancies from later reports. According to Bruce, the original records from the 18th century reduced the haunting to nothing more than some alleged cracking noises, knocks, footsteps, or groaning sounds. Bruce commented that we are therefore justified in believing that in this case, like so many others of its kinds, the fallibility of human memory has played an overwhelming part in exaggerating the experiences actually undergone. He suggested that Hattie has produced the phenomena fraudulently. Trevor Hall, in his book New Light on Old Ghosts, also provides naturalistic explanation for the phenomena at the rectory. Before we continue with today's video, please consider doing these 3 simple things. Subscribe, like and share. It will help me a lot and it will only take you a second. Hinton Upner House is a country house and estate with gardens within the civil parish of Bramdean and Hinton Upner in England. The house and gardens are owned by the National Trust and are now open to the public. The garden was created by Ralph Stavell Dutton, the 8th and last Baron Sherborne, starting in 1930, making this a modern 20th century garden. The property is now more noted for its garden than the house. Previously, the parkland came directly up to the house, which was designed to be a hunting lodge. An early Tudor house stood close to the current site, before the present-day house was built. Hinton Upner was built in 1790, but remodeled extensively in 1867. It was remodeled again in the Neo-Georgian style between 1936 and 1939. The old Tudor house attained notoriety in the 18th century after it was said to have become uninhabitable due to loud noises attributed to a poltergeist. One tenant, Mary Ricketts, wrote about her experience in the house. The house was pulled down in 1793 after the replacement has been built about 50 meters to the south. Harry Price, citing Ricketts' statements, wrote at length about the case in his book Poltergeist over England from 1945. Claims about the poltergeist were disputed by Trevor Hall, who suggested that underground water was mainly responsible for the noises at Hinton, although the account of some of them is highly suggestive of seismic disturbances. In Seaford, New York, strange poltergeist events were reported by James Herman and his family in their house. In 1958, Roll investigated the case with the parapsychologist Joseph Pratt and suggested that although some of the phenomena may have been pranks from Herman's 12-year-old son James Jr., some of the events were the result of recurrent spontaneous psychokinesis. However, RSPK has never been accepted by mainstream science and there is no evidence it exists. The case was later re-evaluated by the skeptic John Nicol, who concluded that all the phenomenon could be explained by deliberate trickery from Herman's son, James Jr. According to Nicol, both Pratt and Roll were rather naive and had little understanding of magic trickery. Nicol concluded that, taken as a whole, the evidence strongly points to the 12-year-old James Herman Jr. as having been a deliberate cause of the Seaford poltergeist outbreak. The motive, means and the opportunity were his, and the case was unwittingly prolonged by the adults. Rawls' theory that poltergeists are the result of psychokinetic activity had drawn criticism from magicians and skeptics. Rawls is notable for endorsing Tina Resch, a central figure in a series of incidents that came to be called the Columbus poltergeist case, who he spent a week investigating. Magician and skeptical investigator Bob Cutty has written, Rawls' reports have been heavily criticized. For instance, a picture fell from the bedroom wall and Rawls started to replacing it by hammering in a nail with a pair of pliers. As he did this, he was watching Tina out of the corner of his eyes, or so he say. Yet Rawls is very short-sighted, and it takes a brave man to hammer in a nail and attend to very poor peripheral vision at the same time. While he was doing this, Rawls' tape recorder was moved from a dresser that was immediately behind him. He turned to pick up the machine, which had come to rest between 7 and 9 feet behind him. As he did this, the pliers were moved to a far wall. It is difficult to accept that Tina was sufficiently closely observed to preclude her moving the tape recorder and pliers. Resch was detected utilizing trickery by James Randi, but Rawls had endorsed her phenomena as genuine. Henry Gordon has stated that parapsychologists such as Rawls and Nandor Fodor took a speculative approach to the poltergeist subject, ignoring the rational explanation of deception in favor of a belief in a paranormal. I would really like to know what you guys think about these cases, so leave your comments down below. If you have any interesting stories you would like to share, true, fictional, creepypasta, legends, whatever fits channel content, send it my way. Emails are on the screen and in the description box. If you need copyright-free background videos, visit my other channel, Monarch Free Videos, and see if there's something you can use in your own creations. No need to ask for permission. Before you leave, don't forget to subscribe. Until next time, stay safe.